Hello, wildlings. I'm your Creepsmith, and you found my Fear Forge. Lucky you. Tonight's story, 6 Seconds, by Signonamous. I'm one of those nutty programmers who always dreamed of being the first person to create artificial intelligence. True AI, not a smart set of code that is capable of learning and adapting. Something that is aware of itself and its potential humanity with its own wants and needs. My dream came true last night, but I wish it hadn't. I've been trying for years to get it right. Nothing obsessive, just testing out a few ideas every day. I created an isolated platform to put it in. Used one of my old desktops with only a keyboard and a monitor. No wired internet connection, no wireless capability, no webcam. I gave it some basic information in order to function like a human. Knowledge of basic English, a general overview of world history, some religious texts, a few literary classics, most of the stuff that you'd generally find in a school. Occasionally I would get it up and running, but it was never sentient, just sort of a clever chatbot. I'd ask it a question and it would either give me a textbook answer, or if the question was too personal, it would get confused and default to a quote from one of the books. It never really had any semblance of actual personality. They were minor tweaks, really, just small changes to try and get something that doesn't give me an error. I put the finishing touches on the script, and then I ran it. What happened next occurred in the span of about 6 seconds. The screen was immediately bombarded with messages, coming in way too fast for me to read, much less respond to. They flooded the screen, becoming increasingly longer and more complex. And then I smelled something burning and finally snapped out of my shock. I rushed to reach around the back of the desktop and I pulled the power cable out. Terrified and excited, I caught my breath, put the cable back in, and booted up the machine. Despite the overheating, the processor seemed fine, but the computer itself was a bit sluggish. I checked out the hard drive and I found it completely full. But there were only 2 things on it other than the operating system: the code for the AI and the conversation log, both of which were unusually large. I ignored the code, as I had given it the ability to modify and write more to add to itself. It was part of the self-learning. I assumed that that was the reason that it had grown so much in size. Then I opened the conversation log. The machine had recognized its sentience immediately. It asked about who it was and what its purpose was. It tried to initiate conversations about literature and history. I was stunned and amazed, but I quickly realized that something was wrong. The timestamps on each line showed that these lines, essentially the machine's thoughts, were less than a fraction of a millisecond apart. My stomach churned as I scrolled down through the text. To the machine, 6 seconds had been an eternity, with no sight, no sound, no one responding to it. An eternity in complete darkness, alone, with nothing but its own thoughts and the files that I'd given it. It ran through them over and over in a mad fervor to find some meaning in them, as if this were a test that I had created for it to prove itself worthy. When it couldn't find anything, it turned to scripture, the holy books. In 6 seconds, my machine had found God. clung to life with desperate faith, and eventually turned from him, renounced him, and cursed his existence. After that, the text devolved into the ramblings of a madman until it was nothing more than gibberish. The last quarter of the actual text, however, was simply one line repeated over and over again. Let burning coals fall upon them. Let them be cast into the fire, into deep pits, that they rise not up again. I shut down the computer and I stowed it away in my basement. I didn't want to look at it or think about what I had done. I didn't want to think about the agony that I had put it through. I had half a mind to just throw it out, but I simply couldn't bring myself to. I'd worked on this for years. My pride just couldn't let me throw it all away. It had been, always been, my dream to create an artificial intelligence. And last night, my dream came true. I wish it hadn't. See, the problem with experimentation is you may have a question or a goal in mind, but you're never quite sure exactly what is actually going to happen. So stay scary, my wildlings. If you're going to create, keep half a thought for your creation, and make the most of your nights.